Info on marketing with Town Square Media Tuscaloosa, call 205-345-7200 or click on Advertise with Us on our website.
Live from the heart of SEC country, this is your daily fix of grit, guts, and gridiron glory. Welcome to the Deep South College Football Show.
Bowen, here it goes! Georgia retakes the lead!
Breaking down the biggest matchups, the boldest takes, and the deepest rivalries in college football on Tide 100.9 and 1230 AM WTBC.
Intercepted! They confused him! Xavier Brown headed the other way! Touchdown Tide!
From Fayetteville to Gainesville, from the Grove to Toomer's Corner, it's SEC football.
Chandler delivers! Touchdown!
Now, here's your award-winning host, Wyatt Fulton.
And welcome into a Tuesday edition of the Deep South College Football Show here on Tide 100.9 and 1230 AM WTBC, your home for Alabama Crimson Tide sports. We're talking contenders and pretenders today here when you look at the state of college football. Who can win a national championship and who is cosplaying that they can compete for a national championship. So we'll talk about that today here on the Deep South College Football Show. And oh my word, the fireworks across the SEC. Lane Kiffin taking shots at Ole Miss. Steve Sarkisian taking shots at Ole Miss. I mean, Reed hanging out with us here in the studio. Did you get your underwater basket weaving credit at the University of Alabama?
I did not, and I'm a up-and-coming senior. So, I mean, maybe I might
You
have
better
a
get
chance.
on that. You better get on that. If you want to transfer to Texas there, instead of being an up-and-coming senior, you'd be an up-and-coming junior here when you look at the state of certain programs across the SEC. So shots are being taken all over the damn place here in the SEC. Lane Kiffin taking shots at Ole Miss. Steve Sarkisian also taking shots at Ole Miss. John Sumrall got involved on Twitter. Golly, man. So we're taking shots all over the SEC here. We'll talk about it today here on the program, on the Deep South College Football Show. If you're hanging out with us on the YouTube side of things, we greatly appreciate you checking us out on YouTube. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button. It's completely free. It helps us out. Does nothing to sign you up for anything like that. No emails, no nothing like that in your inbox, no notifications. Just hit that like and that subscribe button. We would greatly appreciate it. If you're also checking us out on the Tide 100.9 Facebook page, again, greatly appreciate it. Hit that like, hit that share button. And then if you're checking us out on X as well, thank you so much. Again, we cannot say thank you enough for everybody who checks out the program here. So, number one, getting the program started today. Fireworks across the SEC. It boiled down Lane Kiffin. If you haven't seen it, Vanity Fair did an interview with Lane Kiffin where Lane Kiffin basically boiled it down to, hey, the reason I couldn't compete at Ole Miss, systemic racism. And as you know, I've been very fortunate not to have to deal with that in my life and the way I grew up. But I did grow up in the Deep South, and it was evident, don't get me wrong, but Lane Kiffin basically said, hey, that's the reason I can't compete here. I cannot win at Ole Miss because of systemic racism. The exact quote was, a player told him, hey, I want to come to Ole Miss, but my parents, grandparents, they're not going to let me move to Oxford, Mississippi. They're not going to let me go down there to the South. So, sorry, Lane, not going to go down there. And we're not going to take this the way that a lot of people think we're about to take this. Lane Kiffin was not saying these things about Ole Miss 9 months ago, right? Lane Kiffin was not saying, hey, we need to better the program, better the state, better the communication, better the university to shed this label while he was cashing checks from Ole Miss. Let's also not act like sitting 45 minutes from the Mississippi border is this new safe haven, right? I mean, Reed, we've grown up in the Deep South. We know about the Deep South. I graduated from the University of Alabama. You're going to graduate from the University of Alabama. So it is clearly something that is still around 110%. But is it really affecting college football recruiting the way Lane Kiffin says it is?
I think that's the golden question, but I like how you pointed out I don't think 9 months ago he would. This wouldn't have been even a conversation. So
No.
I think that is another, I guess, key part of his response was, if it wasn't for everything that went down between Ole Miss and LSU, I don't think we would.
It's starting to feel like that game on week 3 in Oxford, Mississippi. Can we get some Secret Service members? Can we get some like FBI level trained agents to run security for that football game? Because, dog, that game's going to be insane. It's to the point that some people have started to recommend, hey, maybe we don't play this game in Oxford. You know what? Let's move it to a neutral site, because the toxicity and the environment around Oxford, Mississippi that week is going to be insane. Toxicity levels between Ole Miss to LSU, but I guess from Lane Kiffin back to Ole Miss now, it's going to be wild. And again, let's not act like tigers are native animals in Baton Rouge, right? Do we know the story of how LSU got its name, how the Tigers became the mascot of LSU? Reed, do you know that story? He's saying no. There was a Confederate-aligned group who called themselves the Tigers that were very supportive of the Confederacy cause and were killing freed black men and women during that time. They called themselves the Tigers. That's what LSU is named after. Just so happened that Tigers also got an animal mascot that they could realign the university towards. But I mean, let's not act like Louisiana's this safe haven here. It's not. This is still something that is permeating throughout the South. And so whether you've experienced it, whether you've not, again, I've been fortunate to not have to experience this. But there's plenty of other people out there that have. There's plenty of people that have had to go through these things. And so we sympathize with that. We understand that even though it has not affected me, that doesn't mean it's not there, right? There was along that same vein, there was a spat over the weekend with the severe weather that came through Tuscaloosa, and some people were griping, complaining online, saying, hey, it didn't hit me, so clearly it didn't happen. But that's not necessarily the case, right? Other people are affected by things, and so this is something that, Reed, you and I haven't really had to deal with, but other people have, and so you have to be sympathetic about it. You have to understand, okay, that's their experience. I may not share that experience, but that's called being a good person. It's called being a human being. That's called empathizing and sympathizing with people, is understanding their experiences, even if you don't have the same type of experience here. So, and
I think Pastor Corey in the last show, I think, brought up a great point. We're not like, it doesn't just happen at Ole Miss and LSU. I mean, this happens all around the South, whether it's prominent in more places than others. I mean, that's up for discussion, but it's something that's kind of been an oncurring issue that is not only just between these two schools. I think that also is kind of needs to be emphasized a little bit more.
Yeah, no, it's all over the South, right? And from what this is what I've seen. This is my observations, all right? So it's, for what it's worth, my 2 cents, which means jack squat in this situation. But my 2 cents is that in the South, it's in your face. It's right there. If somebody's going to be racist in the South, they're going to do it to your face. In other areas, it may be a little bit more subtle. Right? It may not be, hey, I'm going to come out and I'm going to be explicitly racist to you as an individual, but I am going to, backhanded comments.
Sugar-coated.
Comments. Yeah, sugar-coated a little bit. And so it's not just the South. I can guarantee you that. It's not just the South, the SEC, that has some of these stipulations and some of these, experiences, right? But going back to the football side of things, because we are a football show here, if Southern racism does hinder the ability to recruit, does hinder college football in the South, how the hell's the SEC been so dominant? I mean, if we're, quote unquote, in an era of where we're more inclusive, we're more understanding than we've ever been in the past, how did the SEC have the dominant run that it did? From 2006 to 2022? I mean, you think about it, rattle off the national champions: Florida, LSU, Florida again, Alabama, Auburn, Alabama, Florida State. Ohio State finally broke the trend in 2014, and then right back into the South. Alabama, Clemson, Alabama, Clemson. No, excuse me. LSU, Alabama, Georgia. Like, if we're talking about the run that the SEC had, and we are in an era of where we are more inclusive, we are more understanding than we've ever been in the past. How the hell did the SEC make the run that they did for the last 20 years, last 15 years? I mean, we all took elementary and middle school history classes, right? Reed, you went through elementary and middle school history classes. Fourth grade Alabama history, George Wallace stood in front of the university and said, no, we are not integrating this university. And then, to loosely quote Bear Bryant, USC had black athletes and smoked Alabama. And that's when the university decided, okay, maybe we should. Maybe this isn't as bad as we thought it was. Maybe we should integrate the university. And obviously Alabama went on the run it did with Bear Bryant, went on the run it did with Nick Saban, and the SEC level of dominance that we've seen over the last 15 years or so. If it was truly hindering Ole Miss the way that Lane Kiffin seems to be claiming it was, did Alabama not get the memo? Did Georgia not get that memo? What about LSU in 2007 or 2019 or when they played Alabama in the national championship in 2011? Did they not get that memo? Did Auburn not get it? So I don't know that this Lane Kiffin LSU thing is teetering, in my opinion, here, right? We're on a tipping point here, and we haven't even played a football game with LSU's head coach being Lane Kiffin. We're at a tipping point here, it seems like. This is either going to work out, and LSU's going to hit their status quo of, hey, this coach can win a national title. I mean, Nick Saban did it. Les Miles did it. Les Miles was back in another national championship game, lost to Saban in Alabama, but Les Miles was back in another national championship game. Ed Ogeron somehow just kind of butt fumbled his way into a national championship win. The last head coach, or out of the last four head coaches at LSU, full-time head coaches, the only one to not win a national title is Brian Kelly. And now we know Brian Kelly he didn't embrace Southern culture the way that Miles, Saban, and Orgeron did. And so Lane Kiffin, having coached at Tennessee, having been the offensive coordinator at Alabama, coached at FAU, coached at Ole Miss, he's very familiar with what it takes to win in the SEC. He's very, very familiar with that. I'd argue he's the second best offensive mind in college football right now. The other guy happens to sit in Austin, Texas, which, by the way, we do get that matchup. It's going to be a fun game this season. So looking at it here, I mean, LSU, you don't get a honeymoon year when you spent $40 million on that roster and aggressively attacked the transfer portal for guys like Jordan Seaton and Sam Levitt and Prince Williamon. You don't get a grace period when you go attack the transfer portal, when you spend the kind of money that LSU spent. So if the Tigers come out and they're 2-2, coming out of the first quarter of the season, right? Clemson, Louisiana Tech, Ole Miss, Texas A&M, their first four games. If they come out and they're 2-2, it's going to be a lot of pressure on Lane Kiffin and LSU to finish that season strong.
I can only imagine the buzz if that hypothetical was true. I mean, like, especially with now, like with the talks, like you said, we haven't even played a game yet. And especially if that's how the season starts and they're going all in year one.
Yeah. And Lane Kiffin he did an interview with On3 again. I guess probably he referenced the Vanity Fair article. So I assume that interview was yesterday or this morning, because that's when the Vanity Fair article came out, was yesterday morning. He's starting to kind of soft launch this, hey, year one might be a rebuild scenario. In the interview with On3 Sports, he basically said, hey, the results that you want to see, they're going to come in year two. They're going to come in year three. And if that's the case, why the hell did you go spend $40 million right now? Why did you go spend that kind of money now, knowing that this year was probably going to be a rebuild? Did Lane Kiffin see something that has got him throwing up red flags and saying, wait a minute, whoa. Maybe we're not going to be as good as we thought we were this year? Is it the health of Sam Levitt, who was dealing with a foot injury last season at Arizona State. That same injury is now limiting him through spring camp. I think LSU has wrapped up spring camp now. They were one of the latest teams to start. So, but I think they have wrapped up spring practice at this current moment in time. Is it that, Sam Leavitt may not be what they thought he was? Because it seems like everybody in the country loves Sam Leavitt. And for the life of me, talking with people who have covered the NFL draft, Arizona State wide receiver Jordan Tyson was just drafted by the New Orleans Saints, right? So Arizona State and wide receiver and quarterback play has come up a lot over the last few months. Every single person I've talked to about Sam Leavitt, or Jordan Tyson to that effect as well, every single person I've talked to about Jordan Tyson says, hey, this isn't a Jordan Tyson highlight tape. This is a Sam Leavitt low-light tape that Jordan Tyson just so happened to make. Reed, you're going to have to hit the dump button here on the radio side here that he plays quarterback. So is Sam Leavitt all that? Was he worth the $5 million that LSU ended up allegedly paying him? Same thing with Brendan Sorsby, right? Is he worth $6.5 million? I don't know that he is. I think, quite frankly, Miami got the better of the three, and they probably paid significantly less for Darian Mensah than LSU did for Sam Leavitt and Texas Tech did for Brendan Sorsby. And by the way, that bit Texas Tech in the rear end, because now Brendan Sorsby may not even be able to play because of the gambling scandals. So fireworks across the SEC. And by the way, we are 2 weeks away from SEC spring meetings down in Destin, Florida. Greg Sankey may need a whistle, may need a referee jersey. Can we get Matt Loeffler or David Gautreaux to come down and at least officiate this thing? Because there might be some haymakers. We haven't even talked about the fact that Greg Sankey is, kind of in a shooting match with Kirby Smart here over 9 conference games, an expanded college football playoff. I mean, spring meetings is going to be a lot of fun here in 2 weeks down in Destin, Florida. Ryan Fowler will be down to cover that. We'll provide as much coverage as we can here on the Deep South College Football Show and on Tide 100.9. Coming back on the other side, contenders and pretenders. Who is a contender? Who's moonlighting as a contender? We'll talk about it on the other side here on Tide 100.9 and 1230 AM WTBC and the Deep South College Football Show, your home for SEC.
Build financial independence all with Chase. That's good for kids and good for parents. Visit your local Chase branch and get started.
Account subject to approval. J.P. Morgan Chase Bank, N.A. member FDIC.
What does it mean to advertise and do your marketing with Town Square Media Tuscaloosa? Melissa started her business in 2014. What would you say to someone considering Town Square Media Tuscaloosa?
My experience with Town Square Media has been awesome, and I would definitely recommend it to anyone. I think that this is the first time in my marketing experience that I've been able to see my return on investment. I would definitely say in the past that has not been the case. In this, I like knowing that that's 100%. A lot of the marketing we've done has been radio. You guys have so much more to offer than that, whether it's, websites from targeted marketing to radio. You are kind of a one-stop shop, and it makes doing marketing so much easier. So I would definitely recommend it.
For more
free at ZipRecruiter.com/radio. That's ZipRecruiter.com/radio. ZipRecruiter.com/radio.
ZipRecruiter. Tide 100.9 Tuscaloosa weather.
Here's your Tuscaloosa and West Alabama forecast. Beautiful weather here through the rest of the week. Temperatures ranging anywhere between 80 and 85 for afternoon highs all the way through Friday. Nighttime lows mostly 50s, but we will see some 60s toward the end of the week. And there's no mention of any rain in the forecast here the rest of the work week. The heat is on for the weekend. Temperatures flirting with 90 degrees by Saturday and Sunday. Richard Wedding at the Weather Channel for Town Square Media Tuscaloosa.
It's 79 degrees in Tuscaloosa.
You're listening to the home of Alabama Crimson Tide Sports. Tide 100.9.
Here in the SEC, when you look at the state of college football, maybe not just within the SEC, because you've got some other programs out there as well that are in the national championship conversation, in the contention for the college football playoff here as well. And so Jackson hanging out with us here in the studio now. Jackson, we're going to play an audio clip here, courtesy of Crane and Cone. Great guys over there, Jake Crane, Blaine Crane and then a David Cohn as well. We're going to play some clips here, and then we're going to kind of give our reaction to what they had to say. So first up, we're based in Tuscaloosa, being on Tide 100.9, as you can see right there. So let's start off with the Alabama Crimson Tide here, courtesy of Crane and Cohn.
The Alabama Crimson Tide coming in at plus 1,500. You lose Ty Simpson, Austin Mack, or the other explosive guy they have back there. Josh, say no so we can clip this out and piss everybody off. Can Alabama win it?
Go off? Is that audible? Can you hear that? They are Oklahoma to me, in the sense that if I draw the bubble, they're on the fringe of it. Now, I think Keelan Russell's going to win the job there. At his best, he could be a superstar. At their best, that offensive line comes together. The run game's pretty good. Not elite, but that running game, its top end is pretty good, which is good enough. I think the big takeaway I had from watching them this spring was they are way, way more dynamic athletically up front defensively. They are bigger up front defensively. But it's all got to fall in line for them. That's the way I would categorize them. If it all falls in line, if their efficiency levels remind you of Washington 2023, in other words, then they can win it. If not, they can't.
So Jackson O'Brien hanging out with us here in the studio now. Jackson, your thoughts on what Crane and I guess Josh Pate as well had to say about Alabama?
I agree a lot with what Josh Pate was saying there. We saw it last year, going into last year with Georgia, all the questions about will they be able to run the ball and whatnot, and they were able to fix that and run the ball pretty well at a high level, ultimately winning the SEC for a second straight year in a row.
Yeah.
That gives me hope that, it sets up a precedent that you can turn around your run game and your trench play within one offseason. So I do think that Josh is right, that if we get, pretty good offensive line play that allows us to run the ball pretty well, maybe not at an elite level like we're used to with Alabama football under the Saban years, but if that's the case, then I think we should be in store for better quarterback play and, a pretty decent season, I would say.
If you're looking at the bubble, right, because a lot of we always say, all right, this team's a contender, this team's a pretender, this team's maybe on the bubble here. If you, like Pate said, if you had to draw the bubble there, all right, who's firmly in? It's probably Ohio State, Oregon, Texas, Georgia. Who else is firmly in that bubble in your mind?
Notre
or is
Dame.
it simply just those four? Notre Dame,
Miami, maybe Indiana, Texas Tech.
Without Brendan Sorsby, you still have Texas Tech firmly in that bubble?
Yeah, I do. Who else in the Big 12 has a roster that can compete with what Texas Tech has been able to put together there? I worry about Texas Tech.
I worry about Texas Tech's defensive front, though. You lost a lot of those guys that were superstars on that defensive front last year. Now you're without Brendan Sorsby. You're going to have Will Hammond, who may not even start the season for you. So, if they can get clipped early, could a team like BYU drive the proverbial nail in the coffin there when you look at Texas Tech's title hopes?
They could, but realistically, is BYU going to be a national championship contender? Even though they went undefeated, except
they were a game away from it last year. If they go out and they beat Texas Tech in that Big 12 championship, they're in the college football playoff.
They are, but I have a feeling it would have been worse than what Texas Tech was able to do against Oregon.
That's fair. So, so I guess in the competing for a national championship, are we simply talking about all right, you can make the playoff? Because whenever as long as you make the dance, whatever happens afterwards. But are we talking about just simply playoff contending teams? Because if that's the case, then I think BYU is in that conversation. I think Texas Tech is firmly in the playoff bubble. But if we're talking about can take that next step, can be a national championship contender, I don't see a path for Texas Tech without Brendan Sorsby.
No, I would agree. And I also think that there's really only 6 teams that are in the national championship winning conversation, being Ohio State, Texas, Georgia, Oregon. Yeah. You could even maybe throw in Texas A&M.
You could. I'd probably throw Texas A&M in that conversation. So again, in terms of contender versus pretender, Texas A&M, I've got them as a contender. If, again, we're speaking in hypotheticals here because it's May 12th, and we haven't seen college football since January. So everything we're talking about is in hypothetical situations here. If Texas Tech plays at their season, or Texas Tech, excuse me, if Texas A&M plays at what their peak capacity could be this season, that's one of the most dangerous teams in college football. An effective run game with Reuben Owens, a very dynamic passer with Marcel Reed and Mario Craver, Ashton Bethel-Roman, Isaiah Horton as well. And then defensively, they're going to be fine with Mike Elko kind of manning that defensive coaching staff there as a defensive-minded head coach. I mean, if Texas A&M's playing at their ceiling, why couldn't Texas A&M win the national championship?
No, I agree. And I mean, it's all right there up front with Marcel Reed, and then that defense. I think that defense is completely fine under, like you said, Mike Elko's leadership. But also, come on, Marcel Reed. Let's be real. Kick him.
He's the same quarterback that put you in a 30-point hole against South Carolina. He's the same quarterback that got you out of the 30-point hole against South Carolina. So with a guy like Marcel Reed, to me, in terms of the peaks and the valleys here, I'm okay not having as high of a peak as long as my valley is not as low as what it can be, right? If we're a little more consistent, the peaks are maybe not as high, the valleys maybe aren't as low. I'm more than okay with that if I'm Texas A&M. If I'm an Aggie fan, I'm fine not getting the high highs as long as the low lows are not what they were. Now, in a perfect world, you kind of limit what the valley is, and you're still hitting that peak.
Right. We know what their ceiling can be, but as long as that floor has been raised, they're fine.
Yeah, absolutely. When you look at Texas A&M. On the other side, we've got to pay some bills real fast. And on the other side here, we'll continue talking SEC teams. Where does Ole Miss stand in your eyes? We'll talk about it on the other side. Tide 100.9 at 12:30 AM WTBC.
And it's free. Go to mylocalcustomers.com today.
That's mylocalcustomers.com. Mylocalcustomers.com.
Never miss a moment of the action. Download the free Tide 100.9 app today.
Welcome back into the Deep South College Football Show here on Tide 100.9 at 12:30 AM WTBC. Again, if you're checking us out on YouTube, we really appreciate it. Be sure to leave a like, comment, subscribe as well. Completely free, does nothing but help us out here as we continue to try and grow the channel here. So again, big thanks to everybody who's checking us out on YouTube, Facebook, X, wherever you may be watching the show. We greatly, greatly appreciate it here. We're talking contenders and pretenders here in college football, looking at national championship contending teams and teams that are moonlighting like they can compete for a national championship. I think, we just played the clip from Crane and Cone there with Josh Pate, and Pate, I think, said it best. If you're drawing the bubble, right, all right, Team A, Team B, Team C, they're national championship contenders. Team D, Team E, Team F, they're kind of on that bubble, not competing. I think Alabama, in addition to Oklahoma, are right there on that bubble, right? If you can get better offensive line and running game play out of those teams can elevate into that tier. But if you get more of the same of what you saw last year, then unfortunately, it may not quite be the case for Alabama and Oklahoma. Again, if they cannot get better play on the offensive line and in the run game. Now, we do expect it to be better for both of those teams because it was rock bottom for both of them last year. And the only way to go when you're at the bottom is up. So even if they're marginally better, I still think you see a little bit more success from Alabama and Oklahoma in terms of they're better than they were last year. Now, being better than you were the year prior does not always equate to more wins or a better season than what you had last year, right? And I think a team that really puts this into perspective is the Miami Hurricanes here. Miami, No Carson Beck, he's off to the NFL with the Arizona Cardinals, but they bring in Darian Mensah from Duke, who was one of the better quarterbacks in the country last season. You also look at losing Francis Maui-Noah to the NFL draft, Ruben Bain, Akeem Mesidor to the NFL draft as well, 2 first-round picks there when you look at the defensive end spots for Miami. But they did replace and retain a lot of that key talent that they did. They replaced a lot of the talent that they lost and retained a lot of their key talent from last season. You remember Mark Fletcher, the running back. He's back down there in Coral Gables. You remember Malachi Toney, the big wide receiver who made clutch play after clutch play as a true freshman last season. Well, he's back as well. And so, like we mentioned, no Carson Beck, but they bring in Darian Mensah from Duke. You lose Francis Maui-Noah to the NFL draft. Well, here's the number 1 offensive tackle in the recruiting class for the 2026 recruiting cycle, Jackson Cantwell, right? And so Miami could be better than they were last year, quite frankly. A 10-2 team that went on to beat Texas A&M, Ole Miss, or Texas A&M, Ohio State, and Ole Miss in the college football playoff, and was, Carson Beck, lame duck moment away from potentially winning a national championship last season. Doesn't take Malachi Toney underneath. He instead throws it deep down the field, and it's intercepted, and that's how Indiana claimed their first national championship in program history. I think Miami can be better than they were last year. Does that equate to Miami being more successful than they were last year? Does it equate to Miami winning a national championship? I don't know that it necessarily does, just because it feels like maybe the ACC's got a little bit more competition, and the fact that Miami is playing a marquee non-conference opponent in Notre Dame. They got to play Notre Dame late in the season, typically when Notre Dame is hitting their stride, and where Miami, at least under Mario Cristobal, has faltered a little bit, right? Miami starts to normally falter a little bit there when you look at late October, early November. That's normally when they kind of hit a wall, and then they resurge late in the season there. So Notre Dame is normally hitting their stride at that point. So it's going to be a really fun matchup when you look at Miami versus Notre Dame there later in the season. But I think, Jackson, Miami at their ceiling this year is probably a better team than they were last season, but it may not entirely equate to them having the same level of success that they had last year.
I would agree, but I also think that...
Oh, shoot. Sorry. Give me one sec. Try that again.
I would agree, but I also think that, Miami's going to Miami. They're probably going to lose a game they shouldn't lose. This was Cristobal's problem when he was at Oregon. This is his same problem he has at Miami. If you can't get up every single Saturday to play and beat SMU, you're going to lose. We saw that twice last season.
They lost to Louisville at home. I mean, they didn't leave the state of Florida until November, and yet they still came out of the first 2 months of the season with ugly home loss to Louisville that they kind of made look a little bit better on the back end with the scoreboard.
Right. Now, do you probably have better quarterback play that, your quarterback's not throwing 3+ interceptions? Probably.
That'll be nice, yeah.
Yeah. So, but again, Miami's going to Miami. They're going to... Do they play Georgia Tech?
That's a great question. Let me see here.
Or Clemson?
I know for sure they play. All right, we got the Miami football schedule pulled up here. They go to Clemson on October 3rd. They get Florida State October 17th. They do play Pitt October 24th. Mason Heinzel is a quarterback that I wouldn't sleep on if I'm looking at Pittsburgh there. They go to Notre Dame November 7th. You got the Darian Mensah kind of revenge game against Duke on November 14th there in South Florida. So, yes, they play Clemson. They go to Clemson, Pitt. They go to Notre Dame, and they play Duke.
Okay.
No SMU, though.
So, do they play Louisville?
They do not play Louisville.
Okay, so they have a little bit more of a manageable schedule, I guess, for the ACC standards. But circle that Clemson game, circle the Florida State game, circle the Notre Dame game, circle the Pitt game. If you can pass those tests, absolutely, you could probably win a national championship.
It is an odd schedule. They start the season on the road in California against Stanford on September the 4th on a Friday night as well. So
circle that game then.
Weird time to play. opposite side of the country, first game of the year. October 3rd, you got Clemson, then you have a bye week, and then you play Florida State. You play Pitt immediately after, and then you've got back-to-back road trips to Chapel Hill to take on Bill Belichick in North Carolina, and then November 7th, you go to South Bend, Indiana, and face Notre Dame.
Without, Mesidor and Ruben Bain, your defense isn't going to be able to bail you out anymore, I would say.
Correct.
So you're going to need that quarterback play. You're going to need that offensive play. You're probably going to see Miami rely on Mark Fletcher quite a bit.
A lot.
And if he goes out, could be a long season. But you still got Tony.
Could be.
But also I would say Miami, like I said, they're going to Miami. They're going to lose. They're going to drop at least one game they shouldn't. And then we'll see what happens at the Notre Dame game.
That's fair. So Miami, I do have Miami as a contender. Again, if they're hitting their peak at the right time, they can be better than they were last year. I think Ole Miss could be better than they were. Could be being the key term. Could be better than they were last year.
Yeah, and if all this crap that Lane Kiffin's spewing about Ole Miss was true, even remotely true, why did Kewan Lacey and Trinidad Chambliss not go to LSU with him?
There's a lot of guys that probably could have gone to LSU with him, but I mean, you're right. Trinidad Chambliss, what he did in the college football playoff was not a fluke. We saw it in the regular season in the matchup against Georgia. If you watch a ton of SEC football like we do, you kind of picked up on Trinidad Chambliss pretty early in the season. I would say that matchup against Arkansas, I remember watching that game where Chambliss and Austin Simmons were kind of going back and forth, and you kind of looked at it and said, all right, this Chambliss kid might be something. He could be legit. And then you watch the matchup against Oklahoma, the matchup against Georgia, the first go round, and you say, all right, Ole Miss has definitely got something with Trinidad Chambliss.
Absolutely. But also don't sleep on Austin Simmons either at Missouri, because he's a dynamic player. He was doing great stuff with Ole Miss. He came in when Georgia still had Carson Beck and they played in Oxford, came in when Jackson Dart went out for 2 drives, came in and led a scoring touchdown drive. So kid's got some good stuff, so I wouldn't be surprised.
He's got something to him. And by the way, Missouri does go to Ole Miss on October 17th. So you get the Austin Simmons kind of revenge storyline a little bit there with Missouri heading to Ole Miss there in the middle of October. The more I think about it, Missouri feels kind of like a trap game for Ole Miss. Not necessarily on the road, but you look at Ole Miss to start the SEC play here. They get LSU at home. They go to Florida and to Vanderbilt in back-to-back games. So 2-game road trip. Then you come home to Missouri, and then you're immediately back on the road to Texas. Missouri does start to feel like maybe a trap, especially if Ahmad Hardy is playing at the time. And we now know for Ahmad Hardy in Missouri, if you don't know, Ahmad Hardy was shot over the weekend after attending a concert. He underwent successful surgery, and the injury is not appearing to be career-threatening. So now we kind of know and can start to talk about the football side of things for Ahmad Hardy, assuming he's back by that game.
Yeah, all I know is that the first game back for Ahmad Hardy, if they're not playing Many Men by 50 Cent on the loudspeakers as he walks out, missed opportunity.
It would absolutely be a missed opportunity. You almost had the perfect storm for this, right? Because you play Kansas, who's that big rival there for Missouri, but that game's on the road. So then you start to think, okay, well, what about the first game of SEC play, right? Because no offense to the non-conference opponents, Arkansas, Pine Bluff, Troy, Kansas. I think Missouri can probably handle their business without Ahmad Hardy in those 3 games. First SEC game is Mississippi State. First home SEC game doesn't come until October the 3rd when they take on Florida. And so if Ahmad Hardy doesn't go week 1, maybe he returns week 2 at Kansas, but I would assume by week 3, Ahmad Hardy's probably back in the lineup there for Missouri. And so do you because you're going to get a lot of hype with that Many Men moment there with the 50 Cent song. Do you spend it on Troy, or do you maybe wait a couple of weeks? Ahmad Hardy will have had probably 3 or 4 weeks of playing under his belt by this point, but do you wait and use it in that game against Florida? Because I think Florida could be a dangerous team this season. You've got one of the best running backs in the country in Jaden Baugh sitting in Gainesville as well. So running back on running back matchup with Ahmad Hardy and Jaden Baugh. Do you spend it on Florida and try and maybe steal a game that you maybe weren't expected to win there when you look at the matchup with the Gators. That's what I would do. I would wait and save it for Florida. Even if he plays against Arkansas Pine Bluff and he's ready to go for week 1, I'd probably spend it on Florida because that could be a lot of fun when you get that moment. And really and truly, for a running back, a thumper like what Ahmad Hardy is, this injury isn't going to hinder him. Like if he comes back fully healthy, it's not going to hinder him, right? Mentality's not going to be a problem. It's going to be you tried to ruin my career, I'm going to ruin your favorite team type of mentality. And now it's ticked him off at this point. So looking at Ahmad Hardy now that we know it's not, career threatening and we know that he's okay, Jackson, I almost wonder if Missouri is going to win a game that they weren't supposed to now because they're playing emotionally or with emotion for Ahmad Hardy.
I think Missouri will probably win multiple games that they probably shouldn't, or not favored to win, rather.
Yeah, when we say they shouldn't win, it's teams that are more talented, or it's a road game against an equally talented opponent, and they're not favored to win that game. And I mean, you look at the schedule, Texas A&M. We don't have spreads for these games, obviously, because they're still 4 months down the line. But Texas A&M, I'd probably say A&M's favored in that game. At Ole Miss probably going to be favored. Texas and at Georgia probably going to be underdogs in those two games as well. But do you clip a Texas A&M? Do you clip an Ole Miss on the road? I have a hard time believing Missouri's going to clip Texas or Georgia, but is it Oklahoma at the end of the year?
Well, the Missouri-Georgia games have always been pretty tight.
They've always been fun. Georgia's always had really good games against Kentucky and Missouri, more so in the idea that they're much closer games than you expect them to be. Because Missouri almost beat them at home a couple of seasons ago, or like in Athens a couple of seasons ago.
Yeah, and what was it? Was it the 21 season when Georgia was down there and they had to rely on a Darnell Washington game to come back and remain undefeated?
Wasn't Georgia down like 21-3 in that game or something like that? Like it was an ugly game.
19-3, yeah.
19-3, yeah. It was like, oh my God, what the hell is Missouri doing to Georgia here? And then the Darnell Washington legacy game with the 6'8", 350-pound tight end just ended that day for Missouri there. But we'll wrap up the loose ends on the other side here on Tide 100.9 and 1230 AM WTBC.
West Alabama real-time news update from the Tuscaloosa Thread Newsroom.
Democrats in minorities are calling Supreme Court clearance yesterday for Republicans in Alabama to redistrict before the November general elections. Nothing but blatant racism. 15-year-old Tuscaloosa youth Will Roberts is in California undergoing experimental cancer treatment. He hopes he can get that treatment back home soon.
Pray that we can get this drug back in Alabama pretty fast here.
President Trump has invited Will to visit the Oval Office. And Marengo and Walker, the only two West Alabama counties without $4 a gallon gasoline. Click TuscaloosaThread.com for more news. I'm Don Hartley.
Coming up on The Game with Ryan Fowler.
Coming up on the Tuesday edition of The Game, we'll talk some Alabama Crimson Tide football with you. We'll talk to Mike Detillier, WWL, the big 870. We'll have a chance to visit with David Basil as SEC bus stops in Fayetteville, Arkansas. Former Razorback player, Little Rock radio host David Basil is going to join the show. All starting at 2 p.m. here on The Game on Tide 100.9, 1230 WTBC, your home of Alabama Crimson Tide sports.
The longest-running sports talk show in Tuscaloosa. The Game with Ryan Fowler. Weekdays from 2 to
more. I rolled up my sleeves in Congress, and I'll keep fighting for Alabama in the U.S. Senate. I'm Barry Moore, a conservative fighter, and I approve this message.
Approved and paid for by Barry Moore for U.S. Senate. Tide 100.9 Tuscaloosa weather.
Here's your Tuscaloosa and West Alabama forecast. Beautiful weather here through the rest of the week. Temperatures ranging anywhere between 80 and 85 for afternoon highs all the way through Friday. Nighttime lows mostly 50s, but we will see some 60s toward the end of the week. And there's no mention of any rain in the forecast here the rest of the work week. The heat is on for the weekend. Temperatures flirting with 90 degrees by Saturday and Sunday. Richard Wedding at the Weather Channel for Town Square Media, Tuscaloosa.
It's 79 degrees in Tuscaloosa.
Want to know what's going on with the Crimson Tide? Download the Tide 100.9 app today.
Welcome back into the Deep South College Football Show here on Tide 100.9 and 1230 AM WTBC. We're getting ready to wrap up the loose ends here, talking contenders and pretenders here for the national championship. And look, people are probably going to be upset. All right, well, you didn't talk about my team. You didn't talk about Georgia. You didn't talk about Texas. You didn't talk about Oregon, Ohio State. It's because they're firmly in the bubble, right? We know that that's going to be a national champion contending team, but we're talking bubble teams here. They've been in the media a bunch the last couple of days. LSU, can they contend after spending $40 million on that roster? $5 million to Sam Leavitt, $6 million to Jordan Seaton there, $6 million. I can't remember the exact number to Jordan Seaton, the left tackle there. New head coach in Lane Kiffin, new offensive coordinator in Charlie Weiss, retaining the same defensive coordinator in Blake Baker. You look at the LSU Tiger football schedule for the upcoming season here. It's not the easiest one out there by any stretch of the imagination. You got Clemson, which we now know College Game Day is going to be at. Jackson, is College Game Day just going to be the Lane Kiffin tour this season?
Possibly, but I think there are a lot of big games this season. I do think they have the LSU Ole Miss games circled, as does probably every college football fan. But do I think they're going to just follow Lane Kiffin around? Maybe. I doubt it, though. I mean,
you look at they're already going to LSU Clemson, all right? So we get Kiffin once. Unless one of these teams is 0-3 heading into the game, I have a feeling they're going to be at Ole Miss, LSU. So that's twice. And then later in the year, you've got Alabama, LSU, which College Game Day is seemingly at every year. So, and then the week after that, you've got LSU, Texas. I mean, not to mention LSU, Texas A&M as well, an old rivalry game in the SEC. I mean, we're looking at, if LSU is, the pick for every marquee game that they've got on their schedule, we're looking at Clemson, Ole Miss, Texas A&M. That's 4 times potentially after the first month of the season, and then Alabama and Texas late in the year. And oh, by the way, you get the Lane Kiffin storyline heading back to Knoxville as well on November 21st. I mean, you're looking at 5 times, 6 times that they could potentially be at an LSU football game. Now, obviously, they won't be at LSU 6 times, but or around LSU 6 times. But even still, last season it felt like College Game Day was just Lane Kiffin's, hey, I'm a better human PR tour. And now it feels like LSU, the media, we say as a part of the media feels like they're ready to just take LSU and go scorched earth on everybody with the Tigers here, is what it feels like at this point.
Yeah, I think LSU has already done that. They hired Kiffin, and then a few months later they rehired Will Wade. So, yeah, it feels like LSU's just kind of scorched earth. Screw your opinion of my university. We're going to go win, and that's kind of the mantra of LSU. Win at all costs. Yeah, they're racking up villain coaches like they're Infinity Stones. So Kim Mulkey, Lane Kiffin, Will Wade. I mean, who else wants to go coach down there? I mean, is there some, bring Hugh Freeze in as an analyst.
I was going to say, is there some scummy softball coach that they can go hire at this point? Because they're kind of just, like you said, collecting them like Infinity Stones down there. So we'll see. But that's going to do it for us on the radio side of things here on Tide 100.9.